swaying their tails and fins. See how them scales shine and glow to the shadow and light. In the last episode, we managed to make a decent looking flock of goldfish with variations. In this final episode, we'll add more realism by using some more tricks. So, the current flock looks pretty decent, but I'm still not satisfied. Let's change some parameters so we can spot some issues. Count 2, variant count 2, seed 8, base speed 1, speed randomness 1, then change end frame to 1500 for longer animation. I'll also change the curve into Bezier. When I run the animation now, we can see that one fish is at halt and one is swimming at constant speed. This is due to speed randomness resulting in value close to 0 for this one and 1 for the other. But is this the randomness of speed that we're looking for? I don't want constant speed that is different for each fish, but a variable speed for each. I want fishes to be fast at times and slow at other times. Fishes to chase after another. After swimming fast, I want it to slow down due to fatigue, like, a real fish behavior. Another issue is the animation speed is the same between fast and slow moving fish. If there is difference in movement speed, it should also be reflected in its fin motions. It is very unnatural how fish not in motion is wiggling like this. So my last point of emphasis, movement animation syncing. We'll add some variation to individual speed and sync body animation to it. Right off the bat, we have a problem. Controlling speed is not easy in Blender. I'll explain this in another setup. For this, there is no need to follow along. In this setup, we have a cube being displaced by product of scene time and an argument speed. So, if I set the speed to 1 and run the animation, cube moves at 1 meters per second rate. Setting it to 3, it becomes faster. We see that this input is indeed representing speed. So what would happen if I decrease speed from 3 to 0 over a period of 100 frames? You might guess that cube will decelerate over time and come to a halt at some distance. Let's test it out. So the cube went forward and back, ending up at the original position. As you can see, we cannot control speed this way. This is due to Blender calculating each frame independently from previous frame and only using the result for interpolation. So at 100th frame, cube position is 100 frame worth of time multiplied by 0, which is 0. Trying to control speed during animation results in unexpected behavior like this. Another issue is that body animation and movement speed is calculated in 2 separate node groups, where we currently do not have a simple way to pass one variable to another. So let's think outside of the box. In these situations, what I often resort to is controlling time instead of speed. One thing we need to understand is that time in Blender is nothing more than a number, and it is not a non-revertible, constantly increasing entity we are used to in real life. Even the scene time we often use is a delta time integral, which we can reproduce easily. So instead of trying to control speed, we'll make the flow of time variable. We'll need some preparation for time control. For all scene time we use in this node tree, we'll convert it to input and expose it to the top layer. Let's start with flock controller, flow control. Locate the scene time on the left and delete. Connect a group input instead. Rename the argument to time reference. Tab out and connect it to empty socket of group input. Don't forget to connect the bottom flow control as well. Next, Goldfish Factory. I'll just create some space here to later add some nodes. In Goldfish node group, we have two places we use scene time. First, in set body movement. Delete the scene time and replace it with group input. Call the argument time reference as well. Connect to empty socket of group input and expose it to upper layer. Next is make pectoral fin. Same process for the scene time. And do not forget to connect to group input. Connect the goldfish argument to group input and expose it to top. When we run the animation now, both fish are at stasis due to time being stopped at 0.5 seconds. If we add a scene time and plug it into both time reference, they will behave as before the changes. Let's set the parameter to count 1, variant count 1, seed 1, base speed 0.5, speed randomness 0.5. So only one fish is showing. As I explained before, there's no requirement to use scene time as time reference. Let's try replacing it with value node. We can cause the fish to move by just changing this value over time. And if you focus on both the body animation and its movement, you can tell that they are synchronized. Now all we have to do is make a node group that will generate an artificial flow of time to replace this value. For this, I'll make another node map on separate objects to avoid cluttering. First, hide the Bezier curve. Then, Shift-A, add a mesh plane. Click on New to make a brand new node tree. Then replace the group input with points. This point will represent the time generated by scene time node. Add a set position. Connect combine XYZ, then drive X with scene time. If we run the animation, this point will move along the X based on the passing of time. It is moving at a constant rate as expected. Shift D and duplicate all these nodes to the bottom. Set the top Y position to 1 so they don't overlap. Then join geometry to output them both. Top point is Tref, representing scene time. Bottom is Tsim, the artificial time we are going to make. Currently, they move the same way as they should. Let's add a simulation zone after the bottom points and reconnect. We'll add an attribute on this point to keep track of simulated time. Add a store named attribute, call it tsim. Next, pull out a multiply from delta time and set value to 1. Connect that mass add and connect the result to store named attribute. Connect the named attribute tsim to bottom socket of add. We'll replace the scene time with named attribute tsim to make the base for the simulated time. When we run the animation, they behave pretty much the same. Currently, all we are doing is adding the time difference per frame, so they should be equivalent. Now we want some changes of pace to happen. Something like this. To do that, all we need to do is multiply delta time with different value each frame. Let's use a noise texture to do that. Change the dimension to 2D. Since the center value of this factor is 0.5, we'll multiply by 2 to center it to 1. Then, set the values to Scale 1, Detail 1, Roughness 1, Linearity 2, Distortion 1. Connect the combined XYZ to vector. Then, scene time to X. When we run the animation, we can see slight change of pace. Let me get rid of these arrows for a better view. Add a map range to increase contrast of movement. Set from min 0.2, from max 0.8, to min 0.05, to max 0.95. Rerun the animation. Tsim is now passing and being passed by tref, meaning there's deviation in time flow. Change of pace is a bit abrupt, so add a multiply here and enter 0.1. Now the motion is much smoother. So, what exactly are we doing? Let's visualize for better understanding. No need to follow along here, but I'll explain it using a grid. Let's pretend we're at the leftmost point in this noise texture. As the scene time progresses, this point moves to the right. In these white region, we are multiplying at above 1, so time flow accelerates. And in dark region, it decelerates. This results in change of pace, as you see in Tsim motion. We need to prepare this Tsim for each goldfish variant. First, connect a group input to this count to make it controllable externally. To make sure all Tsim is different, pull out a random value from combine Y. Enter 1000 for max, and connect index to ID, C to group input. Let's add a bias prevention and enter 100 for its gain. We can visualize by connecting index to combine Y. Insert multiply and enter negative 0.2 to shift them down based on indexed. Let's set the count to 5 and see if they all have different simulated time. Running the animation, we can see that all points are moving independently and are accelerating and decelerating at different timing. Looks very promising. Okay, select these nodes here and Ctrl G to group them. Reorganize. Tab out and rename it to tsimgen. Seems like argument name and type for seed was altered by grouping, so we'll fix this too. We no longer need to see this plain object, so let's hide it. Unhide the bezier and select it. We'll delete the value node and replace it with tsimgen. We have unmatching data type, but we'll just plug the tsimgen result to time reference input for now. Let's start with Goldfish Factory. Rename the time reference to timekeeper and set type to geometry. From timekeeper, connect the sample index and plug in a named attribute tsim to value. Connect iterator of repeat zone for index. Use the result as time reference. Next, for flock controller, rename time reference to timekeeper and set types to geometry. Duplicate the group input and pull out a sample index from timekeeper. Connect named attribute tsim to value. For this, we need the index to match the variant index. So add an index, then duplicate the group input and pull out a floored modulo from index. Connect the domain size to group input and use point count to take the modulo. Use the result as index. Plug in the result to time reference of both flow control. Do some reorganizing and tab back out to top. Clean up again. Then, before we forget it, connect tsimgen input to group input. Count goes to variant count and seed to seed. Alright, we'll adjust the parameters a bit. Let's start first with count and variant set to 10. We'll also set the curve back to circular shape. Let's see them in action. How about that? Don't they look magnificent? They all have their individual change of pace and different speed. Even if we set focus on one goldfish, it is swimming frantically at one point and resting at another. And see how the fin motion matches its movement speed. This is the result I was looking for. Let's increase the count to 20. I'll widen the circle for more space. With this added variation in speed, independence within the flock is strengthened. Though they are moving as a flock, it feels as if they all have different personality. Doesn't it feel like this school of fish actually came to life? Of course, you can change the fish count, seed, curve shape, etc. to match your scene. I implore you to have some fun with it. Last point I want to make is regarding overlapping meshes. Unlike void flocks, this flock controller has no avoidance behavior, so overlapping will occur. However, I do not think it is much of a concern. First of all, though flock of fish looks like they're swimming closely, they actually have much larger z-direction margin than they appear from the top. Human eyes are not keen to detecting overlap when there's a lot of depth. So, usually increasing V noise gain is enough to trick them. If it still is obvious, we can always change the seed until finding a satisfying result. Alright, let's go over what we made and wrap it up. I'll be showing all the layers and groups, since this is the last episode. Top layer. Next, tsim gen. Goldfish factory. Goldfish. Set body movement. Make body mesh. Make eye mesh. Attach to body. Make dorsal fin. Curve to mesh UV. Make pelvic fin. Make pectoral fin. Back to the top. Then, flock controller. Flow control. For materials, first, M-body. M-eyes. M-fin 1. M-fin 2. Lastly, set color. Okay, so that's it for the full 2 hours of making a goldfish flock. Unlike the previous fireworks series, I focused most of my effort in trying to convey how to replicate biological behavior of a fish flock within the confines of geometry nodes. I hope you are satisfied with the results. If there are questions, comments, or requests, let me know in the comment section. Thank you for watching till the end, and hope to see you in the next one.